Okay, welcome back to another episode of Shadows and Ink. And today our guest is Stephanie Rose, and we will be talking slashers today. And I'm going to let her introduce herself, so take it away.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Rose. I'm the author of Small Town Slasher Hiding Lies and the owner of Death by TBR Books, which is an online indie bookshop and an online now indie press as well.
Okay, so as you said, you've written a book, Small Town Slasher. So tell us a little bit about that. What's it about?
Yeah, so Small Town Slasher follows Jenna. She's a disabled horror fanatic, a Randy, if you will, from Scream. She needs an escape from the state of world and she books a vacation at a horror themed cabin. But the cabin is built on a nightmare. Hey, yay. 25 years earlier, the bitter butcher murdered 11 people on the land where the cabin now sits. And the anniversary is right when she's there. So she finds herself kind of thrown into the middle of a real life slasher. And the story actually takes place over just one day. So that, the pace of it's really high. And it takes place in rural Montana.
Yeah, well, the rural settings I think are always good for a slasher story. So, what was the inspiration behind the book, and what influenced you to write a slasher horror novel?
I have always loved slashers, 90s, 2000s especially. I saw Scream when I was 16 and babysitting, and by the end of the night, I had a butcher knife next to me, and I had checked all the windows and doors, and I'm like, this is amazing. And but now, Scream and those kinds of slashers at least are like kind of more cozy horror, comfort horror for me because they're funny as well. So around the time of the election, I was filled with a lot of rage and anxiety and panic, and I needed to do something. So really, after the election happened in November, between then and the end of December, I wrote the entire book. I just immersed myself in it, and it was really therapeutic way to channel my rage.
Yes, I know that feeling. I've written a few of those stories.
It's very
Uh,
therapeutic.
yeah. So, what do you think are the essential elements of a good slasher story?
Well, you have to have a final girl. But I think that not even just final girl, but I think nowadays it's more just like a final survivor or even multiple survivors, which is really cool. And it kind of strays away from the original concept of like only one person's going to survive. I think you need definitely a group of friends or community members that you have to kill because you need victims and you need a killer, preferably one that has layers of motive and a signature style or weapon and some fun gore creative kills. And that increases as the story goes on. Sometimes a whodunit. I kind of do that with this particular slasher. And of course, you need a first victim. And I like meta slashers. So if you're doing a meta slasher, obviously you have at least one character that kind of knows what's going on. And I kind of think you always need some type of trauma, whether it's from for the main character and for the killer, that they've gone through some type of psychological trauma, which leads to horror in there. So I think that for me is things I always look for. And now that slashers I want to write and also slashers I watch.
Yeah, that's definitely essential elements to a story. Of not even just a slasher story, any good
Mm-hmm.
horror story. There's a lot of those elements in it. So, as you mentioned, Final Girls, your story veers away a little from the traditional final girl that you'd see in movies and books. So, it serves up a kind of a fresh take with a character who has severe anxiety. So, how did you approach utilizing that anxiety of the character when you're writing the fear and the tension of a horror book?
So I myself have a lot of anxiety and panic disorder with PTSD, and I have physical disabilities, which actually come a really big part of the book. Without spoiling it, there's something that happens towards the end of the book that really focuses on her disabilities that end up helping her. Um, and I think it's because they're so debilitating at times, making it a strength, I think is really empowering. And I hope that people really relate to that because it's not that final girls are always strong and don't have any kind of trauma history, but they're usually physically fit and they usually don't have as many physical disabilities. So I really lean into my own physical disabilities too, and my chronic fatigue and my chronic pain. So like how can I use that to be a final girl in a novel? So I think we all take from ourselves as with our own main characters, but I really leaned into it more with this book and it was really therapeutic for me to write someone that kind of more looks like me.
Yeah. Do you want readers to actually kind of get that better view of a person that does have anxiety or physical disabilities? Because I mean, a lot of times in past movies or past books, they've ended up people with disabilities or disorders ended up as victims, not final girls. So
Right.
do you think that this is a step forward in bringing that more inclusive?
I definitely think it is. And I think that one of the people that did that for me, I mean, Jay Daniels in My Heart is a Chainsaw, Stephen Graham Jones wrote a final girl eh, that everybody could relate to, but also was a very broken person and went through a lot of trauma. And so I really want people to touch more on, and some of the people that have read the book already, they say, I feel seen. I have disabilities that people don't take seriously or maybe just kind of brush them off just because they're not in a wheelchair. And I'm not, again, like if you're physically disabled, you're physically disabled, but not all physical disabilities can be seen. And that was my whole real focus of it was, and then having people in the story, even that had just met her, that are supporting her, trying to be there for her when she's having an anxiety attack and feeling those feelings. And people were like, wow, I really can relate to that feeling. And no one's ever put that on the page like that. And that just makes me so happy because I really want to write characters that people can relate to. And I think by writing what I struggle with and who I am, it can help, and it makes me feel even better as a writer that I can find an audience of people who experience a lot of the same things I do.
Yeah, well, it's nice that the readers are resonating with the character, definitely. So, there are several direct horror references in the book, as your main character is a fan. Um, but did you work in any hidden references or little homages, little Easter eggs to the horror genre?
I don't know if you like Taylor Swift, but she kind of has a whole thing of doing that, and I did that a lot. I had many conversations with a few beta readers. Did you pick up on that? I did. Oh my gosh, no, I missed that one. And they go back and they look at like, wow, there are so many Easter eggs in here for especially for Scream fans and for fans of just Kevin Williamson in general. Um, I really did that purposely and I loved every second of it. I watch a lot of horror when I write horror. So if I'm writing a slasher, I'm watching and reading slashers, but I probably watched this the Scream franchise about 50 times during writing this. Whether it was on in the background and muted and I had the soundtrack going, but very much immersed in it so I could put in those little kind of like Jenna, the main character. This is a small one, but it's something that doesn't ruin anything. Jenna Ortega plays in Scream 5 as Sam Carpenter. So Jenna Ortega, I put Jenna in as the main character, and Jenna is a nod to Sam Carpenter in Scream 5. Some people will get that, some people won't, because some people haven't watched the new ones. I think it's kind of cool to kind of combine some of the new and old Screams references and then other slasher references from the 90s and 2000s.
Yeah, it's fun to add Easter eggs. I named a character Winchester, um, that made a deal with the devil in one of my stories, which is a direct nod to the Supernatural TV show. So
I love that.
yeah, it's like they're making a deal with the devil. Let's call him Winchester. The last name Winchester.
I It's such a fun way and it also lets people know a lot. Like I feel like I know you even more because I know you like Supernatural now. Like you can let your readers know a little bit of who you are with what kind of Easter eggs you put in your book, and if they pick them up, you feel even better that they find it. They ask you,
Mm.
or they like send you a message and they're like, "Was this a reference to Supernatural?" And you're like, "Yes, they found it."
Yeah, I throw a little Easter eggs into a lot of my stories and stuff. And some of them I don't think people will ever find. Because, like, my most recent one that's being published in November, I have Easter eggs in it. Um, they're actually Icelandic names because the story is Norse, but
Okay, yeah.
they're actually Easter eggs to two of my favorite cartoons. So
Oh, that's wonderful. And you know what? Even if someone doesn't get all the Easter eggs you put in, because I know not everyone's going to get all of mine, it makes you feel good when you write it. At least for me, it does. I'm sure it does for you then too, because
yeah,
it just brings a smile to your face when you're writing that.
yeah. Okay, so Also, that every chapter in the book has a quotation from a horror movie or a horror book as part of the heading. So, how did you pick the quotes? And did you write the chapters, some of the chapters with quotations in mind, or did y'all do it after the fact?
As I was writing it, I think I did write some of them down, like definitely going to include this. Most of them don't really have anything to do with a particular chapter because I thought that would get too crazy for me. I did really want to do that, but then I'm like, that's too far, too far. But I do really, I really had in mind of just really empowering women. Pretty sure they're all final girls. They might not be, and I don't want to ruin any movies for anyone, so I don't want to say they're all final girls, but they all are empowering women and just fun characters that have stayed with me in slashers that I've seen. So that and other horror. It wasn't just I wanted to really give people kind of a list of different films that maybe they've never seen, old and new, and be like, "Wow, that quote's really funny," or "I remember that movie," and maybe they want to look it up, and then maybe they'll go watch it. Because for me, I love slashers on the page and on the screen.
Yeah, quotes are always fun things to add too. So, um, and with slashers, setting's key to the tone of a good slasher. And usually it's got a theme of isolation or at least partial isolation, like a small town, rural woods, cabin in the woods. So, how did you utilize setting in your novel? And as a fan, what's your favorite setting for a slasher story?
That's a great question. I really, spoilers, small town slasher. Wow, what is that about? It's a slasher set in a small town. I'm just letting people know what they're getting in for. Scream, you scream a lot in that movie. People scream. But for small town slasher, I really wanted to set it rural because my first book was set in the city with campsites also, like kills happen at campsites. But I really wanted small town. I had just finished the Indian Lake trilogy, and I was like, well, I'm not going to do Idaho because everybody who knows horror thinks Proof Rock, they think Idaho, they think Stephen Graham Jones. So I thought Montana would be fun. I've never been to Montana, so I really spent time virtually walking a bunch of the different towns in Google Earth. And I was actually on another podcast, and it was someone who was from Montana, and he actually said I did an excellent job capturing the city, and that made me feel so good knowing that if you can't travel somewhere in person, you can still travel virtually on Google Earth and like walk the streets, look at the town, look at the buildings, look at the do they have a main street? So a lot of the things in this book are main things from there's a gazebo in the park, cool, that's going to go in the book, or a little diner. I needed different small locations, so, and I needed places to kill people. I didn't want everybody killed in one place. So I was like, okay, so how can we work this into the story? She starts at this cabin. That is actually where the story starts. It's not where it was supposed to be, really. Actually, the whole thing was going to take place there. But because I am obsessed with the movie Hush from Mike Flanagan and Kate Siegel, but that's easier to do on the screen than a page. So I was like, okay, love this concept of this Airbnb thing, but we got to build it out. So I was like, let's go into the diner, let's go to the gazebo, let's have a movie theater scene, let's go to the school. And so I just kind of had these things that are very pivotal, that are big, important things in a smaller town, like a library, because I'm a librarian. So I definitely wanted that in there. Um, so just kind of like a way where she kind of tours this town. So it really becomes a character of the book. For me, I loved that because I feel, and it kind of going in with the second question you asked of what's my favorite setting, suburbia is mostly my favorite setting, and I really think it matters about what town it's in, like Supernatural, like Mystic Falls and Vampire Diaries. Like there's towns that things are in, Forks. So for me, like Woodsboro is a very great suburban town. So for me, suburban's really fun. Um, but I really wanted people to kind of really attach themselves to the town and feel like they were there. So I hope I did a good job of that for readers.
Yeah, I can see suburbia too, because I mean, like the Halloween and the Nightmare Before Elm Street franchises,
Oh yeah,
they're pretty much set in suburbia, and they sort of capitalized on that perfect suburbia ideal picturesque setting that most people think and when they think suburbia, and sort of flipped it on its head a little bit. So yeah, it can be fun.
absolutely. And that's that sense of safety. Like, oh, kids riding in the street on their bikes. Nothing could happen here in this town. Yes, it can. So I think there's just this like a lot of us live in, not everybody, a lot of people live in small towns, but suburbia is this kind of like I'm a 90s 2000s kid, and we did throw our bikes in the yard and rollerblade around the neighborhood and stay up late, and we felt the sense of safety. But there could have been killers out there. Like if it was the 70s, we wouldn't have been safe because that was like a boom for serial killers. So it really has this like false sense of security sometimes in suburbia, which I think lands it to be a really wonderful setting for horror.
Yeah, and any true crime fanatic like me knows that small towns and suburbia are not safe at all.
No, and I'm a true crime nut too, so I love that.
Yeah. So the majority of the book is written from the first person point of view of the main character. But there are a few chapters that are focused on the killer and the victims. And I was wondering, why did you decide on the dual narrative style? And what do you think the differing viewpoints brought to the story?
Selfishly, I love to write the killer. It's always easier to write the killer. In my first book, the whole book was it went back and forth between the killers. So it was a very big part of the story. So for this one, like having a little bit in there, here and there, I think it kind of gives people this empathy in a way for a killer, that kind of makes them uncomfortable, and giving it more depth to the story, having a little bit from a different character, but not necessarily going back forth with like a full out dual narrated book. Like my first one, I wanted to still give it some, you know, give it legs to be Jenna's story, but also a little bit of the POV from the killer, because then we get to experience the kills. And that's just so fun to write. There's a very specific kill that I had a very specific person in mind when I killed them on the page, and it was very fun to write and very fun to have that perspective. And if anyone's listening to this and they read it, it's the bathroom, it's the bathtub scene. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, it's always more fun to write the villain. I'll
Yes.
definitely say that. I love writing the villains. I'm kind of interested though, is why you chose the third person point of view for the killer as opposed to the first person. Did you want to step back a little bit from that when you wrote those scenes?
I think it was easier for me to keep the killer. I didn't want to gender the killer, and I didn't want to keep saying they, but I also didn't want to do I, because I had Jenna's perspective from that. So I just really wanted it to be clear, because it wasn't like a back forth, that because I have mixed media in there too. We have like articles and things like that. So I just really wanted to make it very clear when you start reading the chapter that it's different. It's a different kind of feel than the rest of the book, because some people audio it. I hope to get an audiobook eventually for it. But like when you're reading a book that has different perspectives or mixed media, I've heard from some readers and even myself, it can be a little confusing when you change things like that. So I thought having it be really different could maybe lend a hand to giving someone to be like very clear. I'm like, oh, okay, now we're here instead of with Jenna.
Yeah, I had a bit of a feedback from dual perspective from one of my beta readers who said very similar that it was a bit jarring. So, yeah, that's something I'm going to have to work on to get that right. So,
It's hard, and I think
yeah.
it changes with every story though. Like what I did in Hiding Lies with the dual narrated, it's like I was I with Adam, and he's the killer. Like right away, you are with him the whole time. So I think because I already wrote that, and it was really fun. But with this one, I was just trying to make that kind of like almost like a piece, like it's not found footage, but just, hey, we have an article here, we have a new radio broadcast happening right here, and just to be like, oh, okay, we're going for another kill right now, kind of thing. Like this is now we're back here, and I really wanted to kind of capture the feel of like a first kill, which you do get in that first chapter of the book with some of these wonderful first scenes. Like I mean, the opening scene in Nightmare on Elm Street, the opening scene in Scream. You have these and these first victims, and I really wanted it to be like very distinct, those chapters.
Yeah, I read the first scene of the book, and it was yeah, definitely you got the tone of that right. It was very good.
Thank you very much, I appreciate that.
Okay, so the main character stays, as you mentioned, in a horror themed rental cabin. So what would your personal ideal horror themed vacation be?
I really want to go to the there's like a horror nights thing in Vegas that looks really fun. But if I really was like going for like, who would you have Dinner with, Dead or Alive, or whatever. Like if I had to pick like something actually maybe that could really happen, there was this amazing event that I missed out on. I can't really travel anyway, but maybe I would have tried to figure it out. Get a car, have my husband drive us. But there was at the Stanley Hotel. Mike Flanagan and Kate Siegel did an event there, and I was for like Doctor Sleep, and I was like, I'm dead. I would totally do that. That would have been incredible. I would have loved it. Also, you can Airbnb the house from Scream. So if I could stay at Stu Macher's house with Kevin Williamson, that would be a nightmare come true.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, the guest from the last episode, actually, one of his new book is coming out, and they offered a giveaway for it, with a stay at a haunted house.
Love it. I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think the slasher genre has veered too much into cliche, specifically with movies, or do you think it needs a new influx of ideas, or is there a revival already in progress?
Short answer, absolutely not, because I think we're getting so you have your for me you have your more traditional middle, so like Halloween and like Nightmare, if you're thinking of like those. I mean, granted, there's supernatural with Freddy, and I mean there's really supernatural with alive with a lot of slashers. But what I really like about right now with this is we're getting very serious, very influential people like Jordan Peele basically making like societal horror, which sometimes is a slasher, but then you still have your meta slashers. And I think meta slashers, with everything going on in the world, we need some comedy, we need some rage, and sometimes it can be fun rage. And that's how I feel slashers are. So, like, we got Hard Eyes around Valentine's Day. I went to see it in the theater. It was super fun, and it's themed and it's fun and it's like, and then there was It's a Wonderful Night for Christmas. So, and then we have the new Terrifier that's going to be Christmas themed, and they're great. And I think that it's cliche, but it's kind of like it's meta. It's on purpose. I don't really think, and then we're also getting just more diverse stories that are like they take comedy to talk about societal issues. Like The Blackening did that, and I just rewatched it the other day, and I was like, wow, there is just so much in this this movie, so much more than just, it's not just stabby. It's about these group of black friends, and racism, and also just it's funny, and they're having a party for Juneteenth, and they're trying to survive, and it's wonderful, and there's so many layers to it. So I think even with something like a slasher where some people don't really still take them seriously, there's so much more depth, whether it's on the page or on the screen, than maybe a trailer shows.
Mm. Yeah, I will agree with you that because horror, has always traditionally throughout the eras, um, reflected society
Hmm.
of its time. Because I was watching a documentary that was discussing this, and they were showing like the horror movies of the 50s. It was the Cold War panic, and the 70s. It was more of the woman's movement. You've got the women coming up and being more prominent in horror movies and things like this. And I thought that was very interesting that it reflects the society that the horror's being the time it's being made in. So yeah.
Absolutely.
So how did you become a fan of the horror genre and the slasher subgenre in particular? I mean, what are some of your favorite slasher movies?
Oof. Okay. So when I was 5 or 6 years old, every Friday, my mom would have to work late, and I got to my aunt babysat me. And I think now, like, what if she liked romance? And nothing against romance, but just like, what if she loved romance? Or what if she loved action adventure movies, which I actually like a lot of movies. So, but she loved horror. So she'd tuck me into bed with my Goosebumps book or my scary stories to tell in the dark, and she'd go watch a horror movie. And I remember hearing the opening score to Halloween and sneaking out to the living room. And we had one of those like old couches at my grandma's house that was like raised. So like it was about almost a foot off the ground. So I would just worm under it and then just watch the movie and then just like scooch out and go to bed. So by like the time I was 7 or 8, I had seen all of the classics. And then slashers was really, it really became like those were kind of, how Michael Myers was the first slasher for me, because I was like 7 or 8 when I was their age. I was Lindsay's age when I saw it. So I think that really did influence my horror upbringing. And I think for favorite, um, Favorite, like, I mean, the Scream franchise, hands down, is going to be always my favorite. I actually really like Halloween H2O more than the original now. Like, as a rewatch, I love Halloween for what it is. It set the genre and I love it. But every Halloween or every October, I love watching Halloween 20 years later. And I love the new Halloween Kills, the first one. Um, I really like seeing those kinds of things come to screen.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, I know you've written another book, Hidden Lies, and you have edited a Halloween anthology. So tell us a little bit about those books.
Yeah. So Hiding Lies is my debut. It came out in 2024, but it's being re-released tomorrow. It comes out with a new ending, new cover. It's going to be technically the first book published by Death by TBR Books. It's a psychological horror set in the Pacific Northwest with dual narrators, one from a forensic photographer and the other one from the point of view of the killer. And I would say it's for fans of Silence of the Lambs, You by Carolyn Kepnes, and Criminal Minds. And then Twisted Tales to Tell in the Night, a Halloween horror anthology is our first one. So Twisted Tales Tell Nights is going to be our anthology series, and I'm going to do a whole bunch of different, basically, types of like themes with that. So the first one's Halloween. It's released a week from tomorrow, and I was able and had the honor of editing it with the incredibly talented William Sterling. It's filled with spooky stories by debut authors, which I love, and then also some very well known names in horror, like Clay McLeod Chapman and Brian McCauley are in this one, as well as Tanya Powell. And all the short stories kind of capture the storytelling of scary stories to tell in the dark, but with each author's own twist. And it's not retellings of the original stories. It's just in the style, the quickness, the short story aspect of it. They're set in all kinds of different, places and different types of, themes. So I really hope that for anyone who loves October and Halloween, they can stop and savor the month and read a story quickly. If they don't read a lot, hopefully it'll get some people into reading. There's also a few like family, kid friendly stories in there. And also for people like me who celebrate Halloween and horror year round, they can just pick it up off their shelf any day and they can read it. So that's what I do.
Yeah, well, October is always a good month for horror writers, I think.
Absolutely.
So, what's your next project? Do you have any upcoming book secrets you can share?
Ooh, book secrets. Yeah, so I mean, right now the not so secret things, but just things I'm working on is I'm working on edits for the. We had so many submissions with the first Halloween horror anthology that I decided to split it into two. So the next one I'm calling just another Halloween horror anthology is coming out Summerween, which is June 2026. And then for I totally stole this. I think Nat Cassidy shared this expression, but I'm not sure where he got it from. But for my own writing, my NILFs novels I'd like to finish are a summer slasher that's going to be. I'm working on that actively, um, picking up, putting down a found footage hotel horror. And there's a bunch of short story open calls and exclusive stories that I do for my Patreon that I love. And I have an extreme horror novella pitch that I gave to a small press that I am still waiting to hear back, but I did make it to the next round, so that's good. So we'll see how that goes. And then Small Town Slasher comes out the Tuesday after the new Scream on purpose, March 3rd, 2026. And we just had an open call. I just did an open call for Yuletide Horror, which is our next open call submission for Twisted Tales for Death by TBR Books.
Oh, that sounds like fun Yuletide horror.
Yes,
I know a few authors that like to mash up horror and Christmas.
I love it. And I really want people to like lean into like, it doesn't have to be Christmas. It can be Yule. It can be Krampus. It can be, I love mythology. I just love all of that. So I really hope, I've already gotten so many submissions. I'm so excited about it. And I think it's a really fun, I have some other ideas. I would say secrets are my wish list to do is I'm thinking the next one's going to be pink horror because it's having it's a big moment right now, and I have a lot of authors I know that really like pink horror, and I think it'd be really cool to have an anthology just like completely dedicated to it.
Okay, you'll have to explain that one to me. Pink horror?
Yeah, so pink horror, it's like hard thing to describe, but the people that are doing it, it's like it basically it's a subgenre that in horror that kind of focuses on societal pressures that women go through, and it's a women feminist focused stories, and just kind of that's like the main part of it is just like I think that thing Rachel Harrison, Wendy Dalrymple are two authors I know that people associate with that with pink horror, and I think it's something that it's really just kind of giving it like a femme experience, and like, hey, this is what I go through as a woman with this, and then kind of giving that to the reader, so it gives them like a really raw look at women in horror and then womanhood.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I think I've been skirting around that genre and I didn't even know it. Uh, okay, so I think we'll wrap the episode up here. I'd like to thank you for being a guest. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Okay, and that's it for this episode. And bye for now, everybody.